Our next session is the making of a life story, where we will talk to our winning authors about their books. May I call on stage Deepa Malik, Sanghamitra Chakraborty, and Daneesh Majid. This session will be moderated by Manraj Grewal, resident editor of the Indian Express. To Manraj Grewal.
Hi, good evening everyone. Welcome to a very delightful evening with three absolutely incomparable authors. I've had a lovely time reading them. I'll start with Danesh because he's outnumbered right now. See, the Hyderabadis from 1947 to the present day takes us beyond official histories into the homes and lives of real people. It's intimate, honest, and so vivid that at the end of it you feel as if you've had chai in Hyderabad. So, absolutely amazing. Then you have Sanghamitra Chakraborty with Soumitra Chatterjee and his world, a definitive portrait of a cultural icon. So it's not just a biography, it's a window into Bengali cinema, artistry, and a man whose quiet presence defined an era. If you have ever wondered why Soumitra Chatterjee was so magnetic, this book tells you very warmly and gracefully. And then we have Deepa Malik with Bring It On, a memoir as fearless as she is. So once you read it, it's not just inspiring, it's energizing. You feel we can all do anything. Anything is possible. So I'll start with you, Deepa. So it's not just about your athletic prowess, etc. Your memoir is also deeply personal. So what prompted you to write it?
What prompted me to write was, I think it was time to share my journey. People knew me only from 2016, maybe as somebody who had won a Paralympic medal. And of course, won at an unconventional age. So the only thing which was being spoken about was how a woman in disability has won a medal at this age. And I felt that, and a lot of people asked me, how could you do it? How could you do it? And then the backstory was important, because when the journey actually began, probably there wasn't any social media, there weren't any awards or achievements. Even a 5-year-old, when she got paralyzed, and how the family juggled their timetables and the ups and downs, the emotional trauma, or the mental strength, or the mantras that kept the family bonded. And then again, a girl who had been paralyzed as a child had to become a mother of a daughter who got paralyzed. So people didn't know this part of the journey. They didn't know the purpose behind a Deepa Malik getting up and playing sports, starting and choosing athletics at the age of 40, and then wanting to win a medal to make her voice stronger. So this journey was important to be shared. That was one reason. The second reason was, many women called me, many people in disability called me and said, how do you do it? How do you travel? How do you look so happy? How do you smile? Why do you dress up so stylishly? How can you do it all? You have it all. And everybody felt that because I spoke English, I was educated, and I was not below the poverty line. That's why I can do it all. But these are not the reasons which make you who you are. What makes you is your resilience, your self-belief, your emotional strength, and the way you have chosen life mantras. So that is why it was important to share my journey.
So, Danish, you tell, yours is not a chronicle. It tells us it's a history of Hyderabad, but told through people. So what made you do that? And did people surprise you with their narrative?
The thing with the Hyderabadis was, like you said, a lot of the accounts, they're very top-down, statesman-centric based. Jo 48 mein hua tha, what happened in 1948, the accession of Hyderabad, the violence and the intrigue that accompanied it. So, A.G. Nurani, the late A.G. Nurani. He's written a great book called The Destruction of Hyderabad. And there have been some other ones like K.M. Munshi's The End of an Era. However, people-centric accounts are needed because sometimes, quote-unquote mainstream accounts, they leave out what people had to go through. And the resilience you just mentioned, which is a theme in your book, how people responded to this tragedy. Because for some people, it wasn't just the old Muslim ruling guard that had to adjust. Because what also came after 1948 was a result of what happened during that tragic period. So how people's lives are affected, asking the big questions in the little places, the micro histories. That's what really attracted me. And besides the fact that my own family has also experienced some interesting upheavals as well.
And Deepa, what about, you've been a journalist, so this is your first comprehensive biography of Soumitra Chatterjee. So how did you balance his cinematic legacy with his lesser known persona as a poet, as a writer, as an editor? And you also quote a lot from his writings, right?
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to do this book is because Soumitra Chatterjee was known as Satyajit Ray's favorite actor, but that was not all that he was. He was actually much more than just a screen actor. He acted on stage, he was a poet, he was an essayist, he was an editor. He was the editor of a very fine literary magazine. And later in life, he took to art. So the reason I wanted to do this book was to capture the times through his life, because he was the symbol of a certain mindset, value system, things that we have left behind and things that we miss in today's, the world is literally going up in flames, and we do want some of those values and some of those things back in our life. That's one. The other thing was that Soumitra Chatterjee, for good or for bad, he's remained within a certain, he was famous in Bengal, and then he was globally known because his films were going to all these European film festivals. He was being written about in the New York Times and such other magazines, newspapers and magazines. So what I felt was there was a gap about this man. Not enough Indians knew about him because he refused many Hindi films, and he didn't really become a national figure, which he deserved to be.
Global, but not national.
Right. So, I had to balance all of this to answer your question. That, of course, a large chunk of my book talks about his journey with Ray and his cinema and, the global renown that he found at that time. But I also spoke about all the other things that he was doing. He was a multi-directional figure in culture, and the values that he stood for, and some of the things that later on also that continued. He fought for justice, he fought for equality, he was down on the streets marching with students to let his voice be known. Some of these things we do not see amongst artists and film stars. Everybody is playing safe now.
So Danesh, all these generational interviews you've conducted, so is there any story, any revelation which really shook you, which surprised you? A proper anecdote, please.
Oh, absolutely.
You're very guppy.
Absolutely. So in my second chapter, which is titled from Jagirdar to Jamati, because there's this kid who I met at the Maulana Azad National Urdu University. Uska naam Umar Farooq Khadri tha. I just happened to bump into him. Because that university, if you go there in Hyderabad, mostly Jammu Kashmir, UP ke bache aate, but local bache, matlab Telangana, especially Hyderabad city ke bahut kam hai, almost non-existent. So when I heard him speaking in the native Dakkani accent, which is similar to mine when I speak Hindi Urdu, this kid, he told me that हम लोग जागीरदार थे बामनी लातूर में, which is in present day Marathwada in the state of Maharashtra. So जागीरदार की थे हम लोग, फिर रातों रात मिलिट्री हम आई हमारी घर में, बेघर हुए हम लोग. We had to then escape to another place in present day Maharashtra and then go to Telangana, interior Telangana. So what I said, how did you guys then get back on your feet? He said the organization known as Jamaat-e-Islami. And by no means am I a proponent of that organization, but I did grow to see a different side of him, especially since my great-grandfather was a commissioner of religious affairs in that same department. So he was vehemently anti, Maududi, the founder of Jamaat-e-Islami. But uske research ke dauran, when my editor Vikram Shah, he asked me, I want to find out more about the Jamaat-e-Islami. Give me a bit more of a macro history as you're telling this micro of Umar Farooq hadith. I found out that he actually told the Nizam, not the Nizam, Qasim Razvi, who many believe was controlling the Nizam from behind the scenes, or whether the Nizam was helpful or helpless or complicit, different story. But I came upon a published letter within somebody's compilation that Qasim Razi was asked by Maulana Maududi all the way from Lahore, because he had migrated, to accede karlo. You cannot go up against the might of the Indian army, and that the rich, the Jagirdar, the royalty and the nobility, they're going to cut deals with the Indian government, which they did, and that's what the rich have always done. So might as well accede. And he actually offered like a interesting plan to how you can survive in what is going to be a democratic government of a democratic Hyderabad, which is going to accede to India. So that was the most interesting anecdote to me. It just made me look at, it didn't turn me into a proponent of the Jamaat, but it made me look at them a little differently.
Yeah, so many shades of grey. It's
Absolutely.
not, everything is not black and white. Hi, and Deepa, you don't like to call yourself as wheelchair bound. You call yourself as a person who's wheelchair liberated.
Absolutely.
Right? So how, is there a moment in your journey when you said bring it on? Is there one defining moment?
Every moment is a defining moment. I mean, the series of struggles and challenges, obstacles have never ended. It just goes on and on every day. I'll tell you a very small example. It is as recent as my daughter's wedding, which just concluded 5 days ago. I had to change the photographer just 3 days short of the wedding. Why? Because the same photographer had covered the engagement ceremony and he missed out clicking certain moments. And when I spoke to that person, I said, you have missed out these moments, especially when there is a ceremony happening and he's only taking the upper frame and only my head is coming or my forehead is coming just because everybody else is standing and I'm sitting. He kind of cut me out of it. He never took the moments where my daughter, despite wearing a big lehenga, was settling my legs because while dancing they had slipped out of the footrest. And I thought that moment was very sweet. Yeah. That was very emotional. It wasn't. I did not find a single clipping of me dancing in the wedding. And I said, why didn't you get all that? He says, Madam, thoda odd lagta hai na wheelchair wale ko aise, thoda sa wo wheelchair. I said, what do you mean wheelchair wale ko dance karte hue? I said, after winning a Paralympic medal and and I said, who blocked you? You did. I said, who signed your check? You did. I said, then you're not even clicking me because I'm on a wheelchair. So these biases just don't end. They continue. Even after having a protocol card, when I'm getting into the airport and I'm going through the VIP entry, the guards out there say, ये wheelchair का entry नहीं है. And wheelchair को उधर से लेके जाओ, wheelchair को उधर से लेके जाओ. And I said, भैया रुकिए, मुझे यहाँ तक आने तो दीजिए. Then they stop talking to me and they start talking to the attendant from the airport. सुन नहीं रहा है तुमको, ये entry नहीं है wheelchair की, उधर से लेके जाओ. And then I have to come close, show them my protocol card and say, कौन से rule book में ये लिखा है कि wheelchair पे बैठा हुआ इंसान VIP नहीं हो सकता. So bring it on moment is just doesn't end for me. And when you talk about my physical challenges, medical challenges, the challenges around policies, accessibility, the mindsets, and this whole journey of ability beyond disability. And, you know, it's okay, maybe I found a way, but through our NGO Wheeling Happiness, since I have brought up a child in disability, my daughter, both of us are working towards empowering others with disabilities. We see it in an extended manner. If it has been erased in our life, it is definitely there in somebody else's life. So a bring it on statement continues, and you have to continuously go on striving for being the change that you want to see around you.
Absolutely.
Sanghamitra, Soumitra had a 14-film collaboration with Satyajit Ray. So how did they together shape Bengali cinema, the modern Bengali cinema?
Well, I mean, they're both legends, and they took together, they collaborated and took Bengali cinema to the world. You know, people started looking at Indian cinema not just thanks to them. I mean, there's been Raj Kapoor, who has done his own work, Bimal Roy, etc., etc. But Ray was always considered somehow, I mean, his vision, his, documentation. In fact, Pothir Panchali was called an enduring human document rather than a film. So I think what I'm saying is widely known. This is not really sort of anything new that I'll be saying, but what I managed to speak to all the people who worked with them, and particularly Ray's son, mentioned the chemistry between them. The fact that they could complete each other's sentences. They knew exactly what the other was thinking, and Soumitra found in Ray a great mentor who shaped not just his understanding of cinema, but many other things of life. So, this collaboration, because it was, and it's been compared to many other, director-actor collaborations in the world, Toshiro Mifune and Kurosawa and quite a few others, which is mentioned in the book. This is where you see that acting and direction, when, this kind of deep understanding of the subject and empathy for your collaborator and what they're thinking. It's a very fine example of where you can take what you are creating if that sort of rapport exists. So I would say, because of who they were and what they found in each other. I mean, it was a sort of mutual admiration society between the two of them. So therefore, I mean, nobody has ever seen them disagree or have skirmishes even. There was no question, because Ray was this very tall personality, physically and otherwise too. But Soumitra and him, they complemented each other so well that their work started speaking to people universally. And that is why, all these films, they are of enduring value. If you see them again, if you care to go back, and many of them are on YouTube, you'll
Besides
find...
Patthar, I'm sorry, my pronunciation is all wrong. Besides Patthar Panchali, any movies that you would recommend? Your favorite?
Oh, my favorite, Ray, and it's going to turn out to be like this prize. I mean, clearly, not able to pick on one. So I would say, my most favorite is Debi, along with Opur Shongshar. What are they about? Devi is actually a fierce cry against religious dogma. It is about Sharmila Tagore is Devi. Her father-in-law dreams that she is Lord Kali, and she has come to their home. And, there begins the deification of a human and sort of snatching away all her agency, her ability to be human. She wouldn't allow herself to be intimate with her husband, to touch a child. So it's a really poignant saga. I would definitely suggest this. And the other one I mentioned was Opu Shongshar, which is the third part of the Pothir Panchali trilogy, which is a beautiful, beautiful, it's a sort of poetry on marriage. The love of Soumitra and Sharmila and their married life. It's one of the most sort of endearing films where you see a young couple, and then of course tragedy strikes and lots of other things happen. So these are the two films that I would say, but there are other films like Days and Nights in the Forest or Din Ratri, which I think is it's about the urban youth of the time, their disillusion, without jobs, and then they go into a forest, and we find Simi Garewal in a very interesting role. She's a tribal woman, and yes, there's a twist. Sharmila Tagore is also there in the film. So some of these films are, there are 14 films. It's hard to say which one is number 1, 2, and 3. But I encourage you all to go back and watch their work.
Daneesh, you're very close to to Hyderabad itself. So how has the city evolved? It has a syncretic culture, yet there are these communal tensions. So how have they evolved from, say, 1948 police action? Do you see something, steady evolution? Because I remember when I was in school, we used to hear, and someone was posted there in the army, and they told us, "Har saal danga hota hai."
I mean, after 1948, my dad, he lived, his ancestral home is in Darussalam, which is right by the Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin, which is where the MIM office is located. Or wo zamane mein, the MIM, it was run by Qasim Razvi, not the OAC family, whom he bequeathed it to after being shipped off to Pakistan. But wahi Darussalam se Qasim Razvi used to spew a lot of crazy rhetoric. That's just putting it lightly. But right after 1948, my dad speaks of a Darussalam jape Marwadiyan rehte the. He got along very well with them. It's really in the 70s, Ramiza Bi bolke, there was a woman who was sexually assaulted in a police station. That's when things started getting a little tense with respect to the communal climate. Many people say that was the turning point. And for the most part, even despite this, it has managed to, retain its syncretic Isa Musi tehseeb. Ganga Jamni nahi bolunga main, kyunki that's in Lucknow. But Hyderabad mein hamare paas Isa Musa hai. So
what is Isa Musa?
The two rivers that also converge, unlike like the Ganga Jamna up north. So, however, this communal climate, it's also a making of certain people who wanted the communists to communists were a very popular and prominent opposition. So to prop up, they've been some other entities like the MIM and other parties, they were kind of propped up, and old city jo hai polarized hota gaya. A lot of, due to some of these riots which you were mentioning, consolidate hote gaye. Some areas became Muslim, some areas became totally Hindu. I mean, while there hasn't been anything like the 92, 93 riots or, the other riots that have made national news, I do notice a certain, changing of the landscape in the present day. I will say that.
Deepa, you've also written fiercely against patriarchy and politics. So tell us about that.
I think I try to keep my book very apolitical. I think politics is only mentioned when we speak about demand of the policies for at-par treatment of parasports or for Motor Vehicle Act to allow people with disability to drive. But patriarchy, well, the way people looked at women in disability, of course, as it is girl child, and then I have experienced where people have reacted to the fact, oh, माँ भी अपंग है, बेटी भी अपंग है, जो दूसरा बच्चा हुआ है वो भी लड़की है, इस घर में लड़का नहीं है, what is going to happen? So I found those comments very amusing, and to be honest, having two daughters in a severe disability where you are chest below paralyzed, you need to be taken care of in a way where your bladder and bowel is not functional, so you need to take a bedpan, you need to change a diaper, you need to have a bath. It was easier to have two daughters than to actually have a son, and they were always there by my side. And now both of them are getting married, so I have two sons also. But this whole image of a woman in disability, and everything got, I think, larger than what it actually was because of being a woman. Even when I became an administrator, it was a little difficult for everyone to accept orders. If not, they were not orders, they're usually suggestions when a team is working together. But my suggestions or anything that I proposed was inadvertently taken as orders. Oh, she's ordering. So I think somewhere there one felt that touch of patriarchy there. But my biggest win when I talk about my journey in sports or in life was when 2016 Olympics was happening. And I'm saying Olympics first. Of course, it wasn't Yogeshwar Dutt's day that day, and he didn't win a medal, a wrestler. He missed a medal. And in our Haryana village, and in the Sarpanch and in the Mehkama, there's a lot about sports that I'm very proud about, that Haryana definitely identifies with sports and sports achievements of their village people, the citizens of the village. And the villages are known by the number of athletes and sports persons they have produced. So in the Mehkama, in the Sarpanch, somebody said, oh, tumhara to reh gaya. And that's when the old Sarpanch sitting in the pandal turned around and said, Thero, abhi hamara ek sher baki hai. And we are from the same village, me and Yogeshwar Dutt. Now, I am a woman in disability. I am from Paralympics. So this one statement made my every dream come alive, when a village and a society which is patriarchal in their mindset, they turn around and they say, first, they grade Olympics and Paralympics at par. So I have achieved my aim in life. Second, they say, sher baki hai.
Not sherni, sher.
Matlab, they are looking at me without the prejudice of a gender and equally calling me that, okay, she is still there. And when I arrive at the airport with the medal, more than 200 people, on an average above 60 years of age from my village area, were there to receive me. And they made me wear a pagdi. They made me wear, a proper pagdi. They gave me a gada in my hand. And usually the pagdi and the gada is a symbol of very patriarchal, very male-dominant kind of an action. And especially the mace. The gada is Bhim ka gada, Hanuman ka gada, and it is usually given to boxers, bodybuilders, kushti, where masculine power is out there. And there they were handing over this gada to me, and the head of this khap, they said, Zindagi ke akhade mein bal dikhane ke liye aapko hum ye gada de rahe. So, I think once you work hard and you make the right impact with the right emotion and with the right intent, you see the results coming forward.
Absolutely.
how do you've contextualized Soumitra against the Bengal's history, and it was the various challenges, and also his rivalry with Uttam Kumar. So how did you, was it a challenge to write all of this very sensitively? And how do you think the present generation will look at the book in view of all of this coming together in one place?
The first part was not a difficult thing to write about. Basically, I wanted to create a backdrop which was rich and detailed so that my reader was taken into that world and was able to understand my protagonist. So that was not very difficult or, did not require too much of sensitivity. But the parts that were difficult were, yes, of course, the relationship with Uttam Kumar was like, it was almost like, if you talk to a Bengali, they will sort of literally get into fist fights over their favorite football team, Mohan Bagan or East Bengal. Okay, so similarly, you have the huge divide amongst fans. Either you're a Uttam Kumar fan or a Soumitra fan. You're not allowed to say, then you're really, you have no personality. You cannot say you like both. So, there was a lot of sort of roiling emotion sort of connected to this huge fandom. And you could see it on the streets, you could see it everywhere. So you have to, even now, after so many years, I mean, they were sort of working together. It was mainly the 60s and 70s. But even after so many decades, you have to step carefully. And also, the other thing that was difficult and required a little bit of judgment was, you are researching, you are documenting, you want to not write a hagiography, you want to build the person in all their shades, all their layers. But I think writing a biography, one needs to remember that you're talking about people. These are people who are flesh and blood with emotions. These are people who have families. And it's always, you're walking the thin line when you're doing that. So I tried to talk about some of the things that were not exactly glorious. He was a Bengali film hero, as we call it, but some of it was not very heroic. Some of it was almost cowardly. Some of it was, okay, you'd say, okay, he did this. And while you are building your biography, you're doing this, I think what happens is, I'm curious about what other biographers have gone through, but I went through a kind of, cycle. It came like a wave. I started out, obviously I was writing about Soumitra Chatterjee because I believed in his story. I thought his story was worth taking out to the world, etc., etc. But when you sort of unearth things, I was fortunate that I was his family, his daughter, Paulumi Chatterjee, opened up his life to me. I was able to read some of his diaries. I was able to see some of his letters, some very, very intimate things. And you have to sort of deploy your judgment, your own, I think, your filters. And it helped that I've been an experienced journalist. This is where I think it also, when you're writing about certain issues, say certain relationships and certain things that went wrong in his life, I would leave you to discover it if you'd like to. But it's very easy to, sort of, while telling the story, it can go wrong. It can become gossip. It can become unkind. So you need to, I think that was something that, and I'm happy, therefore, that I wrote as a fairly grown-up person, almost a superannuated person.
Please have a hat.
But yes, I think those were the difficult things. And the second part was how do I expect it to?
Yeah, I think we are short of time.
Okay,
But
okay.
I think, you know what, I'm sure she's triggered your curiosity. As I said, all three books will leave you feeling very curious and very hopeful. So please go ahead and pick them up and feel free to pick their brains out once we are off the stage. And to end it, I would like to thank the very wise owl, Rachna Singh, and her graying better half. Thank you so much for having us all here.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so much.
much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
And
you.
lovely book.